Hey guys, let's talk about this week's episode of Almost Human. And, I think that this was a decent episode. We're getting ready for the last three episodes coming up, and you can tell that we're starting to really focus on the last story arc of the season. And of course, in this episode, Kennex was having a lot of flashbacks of his accident, the injury that friend in Syndicate, like all these different things, and he's like, trying to piece together exactly what happened to him all those months ago. And back when it originally happened, he had basically been talking to this organization, kind of like Internal Affairs, about what happened. And, I guess they believe that he was telling his girlfriend information, classified information, and he's adamantly denying it. And we find out by the end of the episode that his apartment was bugged, and that one of those little Russian dolls had a microphone in it and was feeding the information to this organization that his ex-girlfriend was working for. So, one of the things that I have consistently been saying about this show was, I wish that they had focused more on the betrayal of his ex and let that be the story arc of the season. Now, I've also been telling you that they've been airing these episodes out of order. So, this is technically episode 10. However, this was the fourth episode that was shot. So, what I'm pretty much saying is I was right, was that they had been focusing on the girlfriend and the betrayal when they originally decided to shoot the season. But it appears that they decided to spread it out over these 10 episodes so that we could focus more on the relationship between Kennex and Dorian. And I mean, it's okay, I guess. However, because they've aired them out of order, the relationship between Kennex and Dorian feels very like out of place, because sometimes it seems like Kennex will do anything to protect his partner, and then in other episodes it seems like they're barely even friends, and he's snapping at him like he still doesn't really know him and trust him. So in this episode, he's really snarky with Dorian because he told Detective Maldonado the truth that he was still at home and all this kind of stuff, and he's like barking at him, and he's consistently really not very nice with him throughout this episode. And technically this is episode 4, so in later episodes that they had aired, which they had shot later, their relationship is so much more trusting and friendly, and so it's kind of back and forth between them. So even though they decided to focus more on the relationship between these two and let that play out more than him investigating his ex, it still feels a little out of place sometimes. So in this episode, we did get some, him consistently having these flashes of his ex-girlfriend and trying to once again go to this, I guess, place where he can go under the machine and see his dreams or his memories. And, he doesn't really get much further than what we've already seen. But now by the end of the episode, we find out that his apartment was bugged, and that is how they got all this information that was classified. In this episode, we also found out that Stahl is a crone, and she was even born, that her parents decided to genetically alter her. So I guess that's a little bit more of an insight into who Stahl is, but we didn't really get a lot of more details out of it, but you can tell that she's not comfortable with it. I think she probably has some resentment for the fact that she's a crone. And Maldonado knew this. So I don't know if anybody else knows that she's a crone. I don't think so. But at this point, I think it's like sort of her secret that she doesn't really want to let everybody know about. But like I said, I guess that, their decision to air these out of order were to sort of build a little bit more of a climax and to have, these last three episodes really, I guess, be about the In Syndicate, the betrayal, how he got shot, and how everything turned on its head. So last week's episode, we had some really cool stuff with the wall, or we found out some stuff about the wall, and we found out about Dorian's, basically his father, the person who made him. And in this episode, of course, we got no mention of that because this was the fourth episode that was shot. So again, it still feels a little bit out of place that we had such a big build up last week with, I believe it was John Larroquette was the man who played the inventor of the DRNs, and in this episode there's not even a mention of him. So again, they made some executive decisions to air these out of order. But then again, as the audience, you're like, well, what happened to that big reveal that we found out last week, and what's going on behind the wall? So obviously, these last 3 episodes better end on a big note, because this is what the show has been building towards. That has been basically how I felt about this episode. It was good, and I think it's better than some of the earlier episodes. I didn't feel as much of a standalone, because we did get some tie-in to his ex-girlfriend, and you know, flashes of what possibly could have happened back then, and to know that his place was bugged. So I'm interested to see how these last 3 episodes play out. And yeah, I'll be back next week for another review. Let me know what you thought of this episode. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you next week. Okay, bye, guys.